Ever wonder how a philosopher could change how we see reality? In this episode, we explore Arthur Schopenhauer's bold ideas on perception, will, and his surprising influences. Find out how his thoughts clashed with other great minds and still shape us today.
All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into the work of Arthur Schopenhauer. He's often called the philosopher of pessimism. Kind of a heavy label, don't you think?
Yeah, not exactly the most cheerful reputation, right?
Right. But we got a request to dig into his Wikipedia article, so obviously someone out there thinks there's more to the story.
Yeah, definitely. Schopenhauer is one of those thinkers who, even if you don't agree with everything he says, he really makes you think about the big questions.
Exactly. And it seems like his own life experiences played a big part in shaping his philosophy. I mean, the guy was born in Gades.
Present-day Poland.
Right, present-day Poland. But back then, it was part of Prussia.
A real crossroads of culture and history.
Absolutely. And his family. Not your average struggling artist types, were they?
No, not at all. They were successful merchants, very well off.
Which makes you wonder, right? How does someone from that kind of background end up as the philosopher of pessimism?
Well, it wasn't a straight line, that's for sure. He was actually given the choice. Go into the family business or pursue academia. And he chose.
The business.
Yep. And absolutely hated it. Apparently, it was a source of regret for him later in life.
Wow. I guess even philosophers aren't immune to a little career angst.
It seems not. But that experience, that sense of having chosen the wrong path, probably had a huge impact on his thinking.
Yeah, I can see that. And then there's the whole saga with his mother.
Ah, yes, the mother.
Not exactly a Hallmark card relationship, right?
Let's just say they had their differences.
She was a successful writer herself,
I did. Imagine the dinner table conversations in that household.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, you've got two strong-willed, independent people, both successful in their own right, but with very different personalities.
You can't help but wonder how much that dynamic, that constant intellectual clash, influenced Schopenhauer's development. It might even explain some of his, shall we say, more cynical views.
Yeah, it's like the breeding ground for some intense philosophical pondering.
Mm.
But let's dive into the actual content of his work. One of his most famous ideas is this whole concept of the world as will and representation. What exactly does that even mean?
Well, imagine this. You see a delicious piece of cake.
Oh man, I love cake.
Who doesn't? And you really want it. Your mouth is watering. You can practically taste it.
I know the feeling.
Schopenhauer would say that your desire, your will for that cake, is actually shaping how you experience it. It's not just that you see a cake. You see the most desirable cake in the world.
So you're saying our desires, our wants, actually influence how we perceive the world around us.
Exactly. He's saying our will, that inner drive, isn't just about individual whims. It's a fundamental force, always at play, shaping not only how we experience the world, but the very nature of reality itself.
So it's like we're not just observing reality, we're actively creating it through our desires.
In a way, yes. But here's the catch, and this is where Schopenhauer's reputation for pessimism comes in.
Oh, I was wondering when we get to that.
He believed this constant striving, this insatiable will, is actually the root of all suffering.
Because we're always chasing after the next thing.
Exactly. Think about it. No matter how much we achieve, how much we acquire, there's always going to be another desire, another void to fill.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. That's kind of a bleak outlook.
It can be, but Schopenhauer wasn't all doom and gloom. He also recognized the power of certain experiences to provide genuine relief from this constant striving.
And this is where his ideas about art come in, right?
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article mentioned something about aesthetics as a refuge.
Exactly. He believed that aesthetic experience, particularly through engaging with art, could offer a kind of temporary escape from the tyranny of the will.
So like when you're totally engrossed in a beautiful painting or a piece of music, you're not consumed by your desires in that moment.
Exactly. You're not thinking about your to-do list or your next meal or that promotion you didn't get.
You're just present with the experience itself.
Precisely. And Schopenhauer, he was a big fan of music. He saw it as the most direct expression of this universal will, but also as a way to sort of step outside of it, if only for a little while.
Interesting. So it's like this weird duality.
Yeah.
Music reflects the will, but also offers an escape from it.
Exactly. It's through aesthetic experience that we can catch a glimpse of a reality beyond our own wants and anxieties.
Okay, I get it. That makes sense. But I gotta say, I was also a little thrown by his concept of eternal justice. What's that all about?
Yeah, that one can be tough to wrap your head around. He's not talking about some kind of divine judgment or a courtroom in the sky.
So it's not like karma.
Well, there are some similarities, but it's more about cause and effect playing out on a cosmic scale. Schopenhauer believed that every action, no matter how small, creates a ripple effect throughout reality.
So we create our own consequences, essentially.
In a way, yes. But it's not about punishment, really. It's more about understanding the interconnectedness of everything. What we do matters, not because some external force is keeping score, but because our actions are woven into the very fabric of existence.
Wow, okay. That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
It's definitely making me rethink the whole butterfly effect thing.
It makes you consider the weight of your actions in a whole new light, doesn't it?
It does. And you know what else struck me as fascinating? The Wikipedia article mentioned Schopenhauer's interest in Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism. Was he, like, way ahead of his time on that or something?
Yeah. He was, actually. We're talking about the early 19th century here, long before Eastern thought gained widespread acceptance in the West. But Schopenhauer, he was already drawing parallels between his concept of the will and Buddhist teachings on desire and suffering.
So he wasn't just dabbling in Eastern philosophy. He was finding real connections to his own ideas.
Exactly. He saw confirmations of his own insights about the nature of reality, the illusion of the self, and even the possibility of liberation from suffering.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
He was really synthesizing these different philosophical traditions, exploring these universal questions from multiple angles. And to think he was doing all of this at a time when these ideas weren't exactly mainstream. It really speaks to his intellectual curiosity.
Absolutely. And his willingness to challenge the status quo. But as groundbreaking as his ideas were, Schopenhauer wasn't exactly embraced as a visionary during his own lifetime.
Yeah, the Wikipedia article mentioned that it took a while for his work to really gain traction. Why was that?
Well, for one thing, he was seen as a bit of a downer.
I mean, he was called the philosopher of pessimism for a reason, right?
Right. And he didn't really play the academic game either. He was fiercely independent, critical of his contemporaries, and not afraid to ruffle some feathers.
So not exactly Mr. Popularity.
Not exactly, but even though he wasn't widely recognized during his lifetime, his influence has echoed through the years, reaching some pretty unexpected places.
So he was almost like this, what do they call it? A cult classic.
Yeah.
Like he had this underground following that eventually blew up and influenced generations of artists and thinkers.
Exactly. And not just in philosophy. The Wikipedia article mentioned Tolstoy, Einstein, even Schrödinger, all influenced by Schopenhauer.
That's wild. I mean, you've got novelists, physicists, pioneers of quantum mechanics, all finding something worthwhile in his work. What do you think it was about Schopenhauer that spoke to such a diverse group?
That's a great question. It's like you said, he wasn't afraid to explore those darker, more uncomfortable aspects of the human experience, suffering, longing, the limits of our own understanding.
He was really willing to go there, wasn't he? To those places we often try to avoid.
He was. But, and I think this is crucial, he didn't stop there. He didn't leave us in despair. He offered ways to move through those difficult emotions, to find meaning, and even a kind of hope despite the struggles.
So it wasn't about nihilism. It wasn't about saying life is meaningless, give up. It was more about, like you said, equipping us with different tools, new perspectives, so we can face reality on reality's terms.
Exactly. And one of the key takeaways, I think, is this idea of agency. Schopenhauer, he never let us forget that we have a choice in how we experience the world. We're not just passive passengers along for the ride. We have the power to shape our perceptions, to decide how we respond to challenges.
To find those moments of beauty and meaning, even in the midst of chaos. It's a really empowering message when you think about it. Like he's saying, okay, life can be tough, it can be unfair, but you're not powerless. You have choices to make. You have a role to play in creating your own experience.
Precisely. And, exploring those ideas, even the tough ones, that's where the real growth happens.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, the truth will set you free, right?
Exactly. It might be a little uncomfortable at first, but ultimately, confronting those hard truths, grappling with the big questions, that's what helps us live more meaningful, more fulfilling lives. And I think that's something we can all use a little more of, no matter who we are or what we believe.
Well said. So there you have it. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who supposedly had all the answers, or maybe just asked all the right questions. Either way, he definitely gave us a lot to think about. And hey, isn't that what a good deep dive is all about?